listening to the MLS Fantasy Insider, bringing you weekly tips, tricks, and advice for the official MLS Fantasy game. Hello, everyone. How are you doing tonight? Thanks for joining us. Those of you who are with us, I know this is kind of a weird round. I've got, you guys are probably seeing this in the YouTube stream. I've got not as great of a view of it from me with this current window setup, but I've got Discord chat streaming with us right now, so as long as you guys are being civil and appropriate, we can have that going on. But yeah, over in the hashtag MLS channel of the MLS Fantasy Boss Discord, that's going to be there interactive, so people watching the YouTube stream can at least see what people are chatting about. A little reminder. The stream. A couple exclamation points to see how that goes for everyone. Thanks everyone for joining us tonight doing the... Oh, the social thing is not working for my little tweet, so let me get the social shared real quick on the YouTube or the Twitters. Gameweek supplement. The MLS Fantasy. Join now! Exclamation point. YouTube tweet. And again I say tweet. Alright, so there we go. So if you are listening, just sent out the social media on Twitter, so if you could be so kind as to share that, that would be fantastic. And of course, if you are tuning in to YouTube for the first time, I know we've had a few more, I've had a few notifications about people joining, so if you are tuning in for the first time with us on YouTube, feel free to like and subscribe to this channel. This is pretty much all we do here. Is we use this to put out the show for some cool little interaction with people who do get to join us, and then the audio from this show is taken for our weekly podcasts through whatever podcast server you so use for that. But this is where it comes from, so you're not missing out on anything. It's just a nice other medium. People who might be more visual or like some of the interaction, you can join us there. So yeah, please do like and subscribe. It helps with the metrics. It helps get the word out about fantasy. And also, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to share as well right there. So we're going to get started. Don't know quite how long this episode's going to be. Theoretically, it should be a little bit shorter because we're just kind of wrapping up the double game week talk. We'll get more into that in just a second. But we're going to be open to questions. So if people have questions, want some feedback, we'll still do some back and forth chat. So we'll just see what happens. But if everybody's ready, how's my volume sound for everybody out there in the chat right now? Blayne said I sound like I was in a box last week, but then you all told me he was wrong. So yeah. I trust you. I trust you. All right, here we go. Hello and welcome to the MLS Fantasy Insider, our second half preview of the single game week options for round 5 of the 2022 season. Think of this more as a supplemental episode for the current ongoing round. This episode is brought to you by exaggerated injury reports keeping players in Charlotte since 2022. Wait. Sorry. Actually brought to you by the amazing Patreon supporters of the MLS Fantasy Insider. It's because of you guys that we're able to do this project and just keep it going and just have such a great community built upon. My name is Reid Connolly, your host from MLSFantasyBoss.com, and tonight I'm joined by my partners in fantasy, full slate tonight, Blayne Riffle and Ashley Savage. How are you all doing?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm doing awesome.
Yeah. Welcome back, Blayne. Thanks for joining us after your little break last week. No guest tonight. Again, since this is sort of a supplemental episode, we're just running with the three of us tonight. So, hello.
OGs.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not
yeah.
an OG. But
I guess technically I'm the only OG.
sure.
Blayne's like
Yeah.
second generation, so we'll see.
Sure.
We'll see. But no, and thanks
I'm the
everyone who's
newest model.
you are. You are.
hmm
You are
hmm
the brand new 2021, 2022?
Yeah, 2021.
2021 rollout. There we
Yeah.
go. That's right. And of course, thanks everyone who's joining us in chat again. This is, as I said at the intro to the show, a supplemental episode. So it's not one where it's really worth going back. I mean, go ahead. I love the metrics. That's
Yeah.
fine. Check out last week. No stopping you here. But this is a strange round. If you haven't already figured it out, if you missed the beginning of this round, you're still good. It's weird
Good.
because, well, I mean, you can still play. Is what I
Yes.
mean. It's strange because due to international games, call ups, the break, whatever you want to call it, if we had had a regular round, there would have only been 3 games. It would have been done, and we'd be talking about a new slate that's coming up, which would have been fine. But last week would have been kind of lame, really. So what the game designers did is they lumped in the last 2 weeks. Again, small aside. Why I call it a round and not a game week? But I digress. They lumped 2 weeks into this round 5. So what that meant was it was our first double game week, kind of a softball double game week, a nice little intro, I think, for some of the new players this year. There are 6 teams who have already locked. You can't do anything with their players right now unless you're still working on some sort of switcheroo options, potentially with Cincinnati. But you can't really do anything with these players as far as adding them to your team or moving them off of your field or onto your field. That's Charlotte, Cincinnati, Sporting Kansas City, Real Salt Lake, Portland, and Orlando. Everybody else, though, they're single game week players. So SGW, if you've seen some of the messaging that we've sent out, you can still add them, you can still remove them, you can still sub them around, you can switch them around. So if you missed last Saturday and Sunday, you can still play in round 5. You just have a little bit different pool of players than everybody else. If you were around last week, then we covered this before. I'll hit it up again. If you have a team that's heavy or has some of these double game week players, DGW players, then you're going to get the points from both weeks for this round. So for those of you who had Ruiz on your team last week, he got 6 points. You've got a guaranteed 6 points right there. If he gets another 6 points this week, 12 points. Sitting pretty. If he doesn't play, you're just going to get those 6. If he gets a -1, you'll get 5. I mean, it's math. It's simple math right there at this point. So that's the advantage of these double game week players and why I imagine a lot of your teams are going to be heavy with them, but we'll have a quick little conversation about that as well for how we did our own setup.
Sure.
But that's why it's weird. That's why we decided to have this 2-week setup with our podcast, talk just double game week last week. This week we're just talking single game week for if you're looking for the final players for your team, if you missed last week, or you just enjoy the fellowship that we all have as part of the fantasy community and are here to just chat. We love it all, but that's what's going on. That's why this is kind of weird, and that's why we might be short. It really depends on what we have coming from social media and what we have coming from chat tonight. So that is the plan. They get that covered, everybody? Well enough, everybody like that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So let's start out. I'm not going to do a hard review, but is anything you guys want to mention from last week? I mean, Cincinnati just spectacularly not doing anything this week.
I saw a lot of Ben Bender hate. Talked about Ben Bender on last week. I think I brought him up the week before as well. Kid pulled out a 9. I mean, you really can't shake your head at that. I do want to be clear. He was on my bench. I wasn't that confident in him, but something we talked about on here, I think Christian was the one who brought it up, and I know I'd seen it in Discord too, was if Swiderski plays, Ben Bender benefits some points. Without Swiderski in, he was a little lackluster, but the pull of data for that is 4 games, so it's really kind of hard. Those 2 hit well. I definitely was surprised. Did you watch the game, Reid? I wasn't able to watch it.
I actually didn't get to watch this game because I was out and about town.
I was just surprised for that Cincinnati wasn't able to pull too much off.
Yeah, I was following it up.
Yeah, Lucho did well enough for a game where no one scored with the 7. People that gambled on that Charlotte defense sure got some good. Spencer picked up Christian Fuchs because that's what Spencer would do. started him, picked him up and started him, which again, only a Spencer would do that. But yeah, that panned out really well. I don't know, Blayne, do you have anything else? Were you able to catch any of these? I know it was just 3 games. Ben Rankin is the last one I guess I should throw out there. So I think it was Tyler tagged me in it. Someone did in Discord where I said that on the show. And I feel like that Portland defender, especially the wingbacks, are just one bad call away from a red. He got one. I know he was on a lot of people's teams. So that 1 point is going to sit there through the next round, week of games. But yeah, anything else you guys have from the 3?
Points wise, I mean, I was looking at average players anyway, and I seem to do pretty well across the board with that, and I'm not upset by forwards getting a little bit lower score.
Sure.
I mean, typically, like I've got Schmidt on my bench. He got a 4. If he plays the next game, that's a 6. That's not a bad score for a forward.
Well, let's talk about our strategy since you touched on that.
Yeah.
What was your strategy for this first part of the double game week, Blayne?
So I went 100% double game week. I was like, I'm just going to take the averages. I don't want to bother with what's on the second week of single game week teams. I know there's some names we really like with some matchups we like, but even our best players that we've come to rely on year in and year out, they're hitting well, but I didn't like the matchups well enough to say, oh, I'm guaranteed to hit double digits with this player. I saw no single game week guy that I'm like, I'm certain they're going to be flirting with double digits. They probably will. There will probably be some that I mean, it's just that's the way it is. But I was like, I can take Ruiz, who I normally wouldn't take most weeks because he's only a 5 or a 6, maybe a 7. Sometimes he'll go off for a goal, but you don't bank on that. But I was like, 2 6s gets me more than what I would look at for Carlos Heel on an average week for him. It's just, that's the way it is. So I was like, I'm going to see if I can hedge my bets. Let's take all averages and hope that we can just outscore a lot of the single game week options and just play it safe with this one.
Did you do can I ask you, did you do a 2 scrub defense so you auto ruin?
Yep, I'm just doing a straight up auto ru. And given the way this week works, you have one final game with LA Galaxy after everybody but Portland's played. I've got enough money, I could take out one of those 4 million scrubs if my bench doesn't play well, but I've got Schmidt, who will probably get me a few more points, and I've got Swiderski there. So I've got my 2 guys that are coming in. Like, there's no reason for me to make that change. But I mean, if you had a Vasquez on your bench and he gets another 2 and you've only got 4, why not roll the dice with the defender and get rid of him? That was kind of my strategy, but it was all emergency if you see somebody who doesn't do well in their 2 games. But for me, I thought Vasquez was going to get it, and I still think he can score against Montreal. So I started him of my forwards. It was just, I wasn't sure if Swiderski was going to go, and I was busy Saturday, so I didn't get to see the lineups.
Yeah.
So I played it safe. And I think other than Yimmy, it worked out, but I was looking through about the top 10, 15 players in the game, and I think everybody captained Yimmy up there. So if you've got the Yimmy captain and he only got you the 4 points, I think everybody's in that boat right now.
Lots of people.
Yeah, that was definitely the safe play for a lot of people who were just trying to hedge their bets or just weren't really sure about what was going to go on. People were definitely hoping for more, I guess, against Orlando, but at the same time, people were also banking on Antonio Carlos, and so that was sort of one of those times where it's like, what do you really want? I think you had a bit more traditional approach, Ashley, for yourself. Yeah,
I did. Something I'm always reminded by one of my good friends who plays, and I always forget it in the strategy sense, was that you always start the players that are on singles later. And if you want to use them as scrubs, you can use them as scrubs. If I tend to always fall in the mistake of having a great bench, which is still points. But at this point of the season, a good bench means more scrubs, and more scrubs means less price rise, right? That's where we're still at. Later down the road, I don't care. But, in these first couple of weeks, I totally do. I am picky. I had 3 single game week players. I was running Con just to see. We talked about this last week. I just liked the schedule. It seemed good enough to just try. And then I had the Philly keeper, whomever it might be, should be Andre Blake. He should be back in time. A Philly defender, but not just any Philly defender. I like Kai Wagner. I think you could still, who's the cheap, Hariel? Is that how you say his name? He's the cheap guy that's been playing on the wing instead. What?
We'll roll with it.
Yeah, I feel pretty confident in it. And then, unlike Blayne, I do like Carlos Heel enough to have him this week. Carlos Heel and Zella on their normal weeks put up double game week numbers, especially at home. I don't know if he will, but I wanted to have him just in case, so I had that option. And if I needed to scrub him out because my bench did really well, maybe he wasn't in the lineup or something, I could, because I still had every other player half their points already in. So I think a good amount of people probably have similar players. Actually, do you have the same? I think.
Yeah, I had a similar. Now my double game week strategy was a little bit different. I actually doubled up on Sporting Kansas City, and so I had both Fontas and Mirren on my team. So I benefited from one of those 2 clean sheets this week. I did the same thing with Cincinnati, and that was just a standard safe play for how it worked. I mean, you're going to get to see all of Cincinnati's games, all of their points, before you have to make a significant investment in any other single game week players. So the best shot we were all hoping for was that maybe that the Charlotte game might have been a 0-0 draw or something. That was what it is. There's a small hope that maybe Montreal will struggle some, but I think people are probably discounting a Cincinnati clean sheet at this point. Then I had Vasquez and Acosta, which I think that's pretty chalk for what happened this week. Vasquez is great. I'm definitely going to let that 7 come in. Fontas and Mirren with their 8 and 9. That's also fantastic. So that's going to be a good points there. But yeah, I have Blake as the backup for myself with the keeper. I had Wagner in my team right now. Then I have Heel. I have the ability to make some changes. Like what I was leaving myself room for is, you're exactly right. You want to start those single game week guys so you can make the moves. With Wagner, I can move down to Hariel. That frees up some points. I still have 3 million in the bank. So if I decide I don't care, if I don't like Vasquez's numbers, I still have a scrub on my bench right now that I could easily get up to a 7 million defender if I want to have that option as a third bench, or if I want to go even crazy and if I want to move Wagner down to a lower, save a few million there, I could bring in like a Vela or someone into a 4 just straight up to fill up another one of my scrub spots. So I've left some of my room there, but was really hoping that would get some of those con points to clear even more money from having one of those high profile. We'll cover some of the other single game week options. Philly's probably a pretty chalky one, a pretty standard one, but there could be a few options. I think it's safe to say that most people either have 0 to maybe 3 single game week players. If you have more than 3, I'd say that's probably a mistake. I think you're going to have plenty of good scores from, like Blayne was talking about. You'll have guys like Antonio Carlos got a 4. If he gets a 4 next week, he's got an 8, which is going to be, as you see,
shutout.
Fontas got a 9 from his one game. That's a solid score for a single game week player. You're probably going to be scratching the bottom of the barrel to start comparing some there. So if you're going more than 3 makes sense to me. Like I said, Heel is someone you're going to be targeting because he gets 14 points on the road coming back from the crazy snow game. The Wagner's the same way. He has the ability to just get a massive game on his own. Like he got what, 11 last week, so he could get a huge point total that's going to rival some of these. Like if he ends up with a 10 or 11 and Carlos gets 4 or 3 next week and comes away with 7 or 8, I mean that's a nice little score there too.
I think I'll add to that that when we look at these players, because we've talked about this a little bit, we're not just looking at like, oh, I like that matchup more than the double game week, right? We look at it and say, oh, Carlos Heel produces double-digit points on the reg, and I like that matchup, right? So sometimes I'll see teams or people post and stuff and tag us, and there's like 3 double game week players and a double game week. And I'm like, oh, no. And you got to have at least half your team, if not more, even on a week like this where there was only 6 teams, right? I think it's important when you're looking at single game week players, not just to look at the matchup, but to also look at what that player does or doesn't consistently produce. And I think Heel and Wagner are 2 players where they're producing so many bonus points, so many extra things. They're consistent, not just in these first 4 games, but overall for us in fantasy. So those are the type of players we're going to take a gamble on. Like the Higuain shout, I saw Higuain a little bit. I think he was in some of Skylar's stuff. That's a long shot for me because he didn't even get on the scoreboard until last week, and it was a PK. And I know they're playing at home, but they're playing against a decent Houston team. So it's those types of things when you're thinking about like, oh no, but Vela's good now, right? So I should have Vela. Well, maybe. Let's kind of, talk that through. And like I said, I think it's important to not just look at the matchup, but look at the player. And for me to take a single game week player, they have to check both those boxes. I like the matchup and I like the player. So I think that's important to consider when you hold those spots open for them.
And this was a weird week, again, for some of this double game week planning because on a regular double game, if let's just take this LAFC game that's coming up and say this is a regular double game week, as Ashley touched on some last week, normally this would mean there's going to be some games on Tuesday, on Wednesday, something like that. And so there's going to be a few days of rest between when the teams are then playing again on the weekend, maybe even having to travel across country during that time. But this is a whole week. So even these teams that had a double game, they've had a regular amount of rest. So just using LAFC on a traditional game week, you could be saying, oh, hey, well, I know that they're playing Orlando on the road, but Orlando just traveled across country to Portland, and now they're coming back home to play against LAFC, which probably already came here. They're fresh legs. They're rested. That would normally be part of your thought process for why you might want to pick up a Vela on the road or one of these big name players. But yeah, they went to Portland last Sunday, and now they've come back, and they're going to play again on Saturday. So it's a full time. So that's another element of what you might be factoring into a more traditional double game week. And we just want to make sure we point that out because we're sort of easing into what double game weeks mean. We'll talk about this a little bit different in the future with other double game weeks for why other teams or even single game week players may edge out people.
Yeah, that plays into my strategy a lot. I'm a big one that I would have brought it up last week if I had been on the show, but the 1.75 times the average over 2 games or whatever. So it's 0.85 times your average, or you get about 1.75 instead of 2 points when you play a double game week on a normal Wednesday, Saturday rotation or whatever, because of tired legs, because there is rotation, because guys get subbed out a little bit. Nobody hits twice their average on the typical double game week if you have to play them all the time. But this isn't the typical double game week. You can bank on more of a double your average style of score and feel pretty comfortable in that because they do get the extra rest. This isn't the traditional. And one thing to touch on is you guys are talking about big bench scores. On these big double game weeks, anytime I go all in on double game week, I am putting my 3 weakest options on my bench. It's just I run a strict auto rule on this in my 3 weakest options. So when everybody's talking, oh, I'm thinking my bench is going to do big, I usually put kind of a flyer player out there. I take a punt. This week I have Pereira on my bench, who's probably not going to play after getting carted off. So that's kind of a wasted spot. But again, I was not sold on him, but he was the playmaker that was going to go 2 games for Orlando with Torres on international duty. So I was like, I'll just take a risk on him. And if he gives me a bad score, he gives me a bad score. I would never put a better scoring option on my bench like that. And the other 2 are forwards because I was like, oh, Vasquez has been playing really well and he shoots a lot. And I know Reid's big on who shoots a lot. And against Charlotte, I was like, he's going to shoot. So he's going to pick up the bonus points and I'll have a decent bonus point floor on my bench. Who knew Swiderski was going to put a brace up in the first game? I mean, it's just, to start him. So it's back and forth on that. So I always play weaker benches here in these weeks. I like strong benches on regular weeks, but double game weeks, you want your weakest options there so you can grab your averages from the other guys.
I agree with everything you're saying, but I wouldn't say weaker. I like to call them like, I think you said it when you started, like kind of like gut picks, like non-chalk, something that I just feel like, I don't know if this is going to hit, but I want to take a gamble on it, if that makes sense, right? Because, maybe someone that you're not necessarily not as confident in, but
and weaker's a bad term, but it's like
yeah.
the guys I expect to put up the fewest points on my lineup.
Sure.
I'm going to take the best 14 guys I can that are going to play, 13 guys. I'm going to take the best scoring guys I can find. But then the 3 I expect to get the lowest points are the 3 that are going on my bench.
Sure.
And that's just you kind of got to make your picks. Forwards get that a lot, and these I will almost never put a defender on my double game week bench. It's a waste of a bench spot because their floor is usually pretty solid when you're taking them for a double, and getting double that is as good as a clean sheet. So just roll with the two games and just pray for the best. So it's a different strategy, but that's what I've always done for these big ones. And so far, it seems to be working for this week. I missed a couple of players, but I'm not upset with my score at all running this strategy. It's just...
And you got a whole nother week of games. They're all theoretically going to all play again, right? So
yeah.
Exactly. We could all have a different vibe next week.
And if you're a little confused about some of these terms, switcheroo, autoroo, you'll hear keeperoo as well that we talk about, head over to the MLS Fantasy Boss YouTube account. I have a video from last year where I talk about what the autoroo is, what the switcheroo is, what the keeperoo is, and how you can implement that on your team. It's a little bit dated, it's from last year, but the concepts are still the same, and so you can check that out. So if you aren't familiar with this sort of slightly advanced fantasy strategy, team building strategy, you can go and check that out right now or later. You have some time. It's all good. But that's most of what we wanted to, again, hit on this point of why we're doing this episode, why it's a little bit weird, and to stress again that if you've messed up, quote unquote, and you didn't get some of these guys, or maybe you only have a couple of double game week guys, you're still fine. You are still fine. There are still a lot of options. You might not get as big of a score as maybe you had hoped for, but you still have a lot of a round that you can salvage. People will still be increasing with their value as well. And so you still have the ability to have a perfectly respectable round 5 and a lot of season left to build. So what we're going to do right now is very quick housekeeping. Then we're going to get into some of the single game week options for those of you who are either filling out the rest of your team, or for those of you who are needing to build an entire team because maybe you missed the beginning of this round. All right, let's do our quick housekeeping for the second half of this strange round 5 double game week. We're not going to touch on our leagues right now because those are still in progress. But if you're currently winning one, congratulations. The important thing to point out is the second half of round 5 starts on Saturday, April 2nd. To no April Fools. Starts on Saturday, April 2nd at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with Chicago versus Dallas. So again, a little bit later start than the normal, but not quite as late as we had last week. So Saturday, April 2nd, 3:30 p.m. with Chicago and Dallas. For those of you who do have Cincinnati players, they will play at 4 o'clock p.m., so they should be wrapping up by 6. And so be sure to start checking your lineups options around that 6 o'clock-ish time. So if you have Cincinnati players you want to force into your team or replace so that they don't come into your team, which might be the more likely option if Vasquez doesn't do fantastic. Yeah. That's when you're going to want to be checking the lineups to for some single game week player options. Again, like I said, the double game week teams, you won't be able to do anything. Their players should be grayed out for you, but Sporting Kansas City, Portland, RSL, Cincinnati, Charlotte, and Orlando. Everybody else is up for grabs. The quick way to find a double game week player is there's actually a double game week checkbox that you can use in the game. You can't just check single game week players, so it's all good there. But that's just the players you won't be able to do anything with. Everybody else is single game week. Blayne does have some injury updates for us, but in general, this is a great week to head to the MLS Fantasy Boss Discord and go down to the Fantasy Tools subsection of the Discord, and you can find the mega reference that's pinned, which will be talking about some call-up information, which will be talking about injury information and things like that. But Blayne, you have the main update for us.
Yeah, Ranch was quick to get me some stuff when I said I didn't have anything right before the show, and he came through. We've got some good news in Seattle. It looks like Ladero, Ruidiaz, and Madranda are all back and ready to go or close to it.
They're training. I'll believe it when I see it. They're training.
Yeah.
I was at it. Yeah.
Seattle's been one of those teams that we haven't really been looking at, but if they're getting guys back, this could be big. Kamar Lawrence is close to his return with Minnesota after his trade. And then from just midweek stuff or the first weekend stuff, Krylak's back with RSL and Eric Williamson's back from his ACL injury with Portland. Your two big ones to note for single game weeks, though, that could affect your week. Stefan Fry and Zeller Ryan are both listed as questionable right now. Zeller is one of those single game week guys I know a lot of people could be looking at, and
shouldn't be.
Just watch for those. And then it looks like just from the midweek updates, Herrera picked up another injury for RSL. Holt was a halftime sub. Could be tactical. Could be something more. And then Van Rankin for Portland picked up a red card. So that's some defensive struggles for a couple of those teams that we saw play. So 2 weeks rest against a weakened defensive team may not be a bad thing to look into. But that's pretty much all we've got at this point. Just a few minor updates to go with, and potentially could change your strategy with some of the double game week implications on guys getting injured in the middle of the season or in the middle of the round.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks for that quick update. Yeah, Zella is a big piece of news that people are going to want to keep an eye on. That was one of the other kind of viable single game week options I know people were keeping an eye on. But again, to keep up with this, head over to MLSFantasyBoss.com/Discord. That's the easiest way to find the link to join to become a member of the MLS Fantasy Boss Discord community. It's free, it's fun, cool resources like this that Blayne's talking about. Great chat from some of the top players in the game, former and current winners. So it's a great place to just go and hang out and check it out and get access to these sorts of things. So very, very cool. All right, that's the quick housekeeping. Now we're going to move on to the single game week player options for those of you who may need them for round 5. Tweet. Social. All right, here's the final part of our show where we're going to talk about the single game week player options for the remainder of round 5. Again, if you're just joining us on the stream or if you've just jumped to this point in the podcast, round 5 has this weird 2-week double game week. So if you are looking for some of the players from last week that were on a double game, they're locked. If they're on your team, you have them. If not, you can't do anything with them. You may need to have some single game week players to fill your gaps. This may be planned, or this may be panic at this time. Don't panic. I've got a towel here someplace. Put it over your eyes. No need to panic. It's going to be okay. We're here to help you find some of those players who are still viable, or some of the games that you may want to target to find some players to help fill out your team, make it through the end of round 5, and then just to keep on moving on as we wrap up this first quarter of the Champions League. So let's just start talking keepers and defenders. Now, Blayne, you don't have any, so feel free to be like, I don't know, I didn't think this was worth it, and Ashley and I can fill in the rest from there. But if you have people you want to throw out, please feel free to at this time.
Yeah, not really much for keepers and defenders this week. This is why I didn't take a single game week keeper on this. I actually went for a double with Portland on the back end. All the matchups I saw, I don't see clean sheets very much anywhere. The teams I liked for clean sheets are on the road, which you never want to take. I mean, maybe you look at Philly here, and that's where I would tell people to go if you need single game week players. Probably going to look at Philly and maybe back up with Colorado on that. But I didn't like any of the options I saw. I just took floors. But those are the two teams. If I had to make a single game week team right now, those would be the two teams I would be targeting.
Ashley, anybody else you want to add?
No, I mean, we kind of already touched on it a little bit, but I like Andre Blake. I like Kai Wagner. I think depending on how you would have them positionally on a team as a single game week player, I think you could downgrade to a different Philly defender just to have one. But for me, it's kind of Kai Wagner or nothing. I could see a shout, maybe for Minnesota or Colorado, just because Seattle's had some scoring troubles and guys are going to just be getting back from international duty. You don't know how healthy anybody is. Minnesota's been a pretty decent home stand so far this season. I think it's a reach. But if you're in a situation where maybe, you want to scrub out someone or whatever, I think that Colorado or Minnesota could be kind of out there picks, but generally just Andre Blake, Guy Wagner for me.
Yeah, those are two of the teams that I'd be looking at. Potentially, you guys mentioned this a little bit earlier. If you're strapped and you're trying to scramble for some guys, you could potentially look at Houston. Since Miami has struggled even at home, that might be a bench option if you want to try to see some of those. It's not going to be a fantastic bench option since the games are going to be so late. You're basically looking at LA Galaxy after that. But I mean, if you're struggling for some players and these people aren't looking great, Houston's had some better defensive performances. Miami is struggling. That's another team you could take a look at. Otherwise, I've also seen people talking about Room as a possible keeperoo. Not awful. Definitely not at all. You're not really you won't be able to see all of the Cincinnati points if you're hoping to, if you have Con still, because just the start time, it'd be really close, or you'd have to say, well, who knows? I forget those last 5 minutes of the Cincinnati game, and then Con scores a goal from a kickoff. Who knows? Something crazy like that would happen. That would be because of MLS. But not awful. But I think most people are going to be running either two double game week keepers or some sort of Con Blake option is probably going to be the most chalky thing that's going to happen this round.
I really hate that you just said that, because I spent 4 minutes earlier explaining to Spencer why Steve Clark was a terrible single game week keeper option, and now you've just validated him for the next several days.
Well, if you need to put Spencer in his place, just remind him about his promotion relegation ranking.
Well, I don't like to put him in his place. I just like to tell him when something's too bold of an idea.
When it's too much of pulling a Spencer.
It's too bold, yeah.
Too much of a Spencer. Got it. Well, let's move on to maybe, I don't know if this would be more or less bold, but let's talk about midfield options that you may still need, Ashley.
I mean, for me, the one name is Carlos Gil. I know we almost consider him fixture-proof when he's healthy and everybody around him is healthy. Red Bull are not a slouch of a team to come into New England, and we all three have talked so far this season that New England doesn't look quite right. But Carlos Gil does, at least from a fantasy point perspective. I still like him enough to have him in my lineup starting for single game week this week. There's not a lot of other options. I could hear Gazdag from Philly. I don't think we talk about him enough, give him enough kind of a shout, and he's been producing pretty decently. I could see that as one. I also could see some of the Austin midfield, because San Jose is just a nightmare so far this year. But they're on the road. And Austin hasn't fared as well on the road so far this year. I know they had that hot home start, but a lot of their midfielders are expensive, which is why I don't know that would be where I would want to spend my money. But if you are, like Reid said, kind of in one of those situations where you forgot and you need to fill a whole team, I could see picking up someone from Austin playing against that San Jose team. But other than those, there's not a lot that I particularly like. I saw Jack Price floated around. I don't really see that one. For me, it's just Heel, maybe Gazdag, and then at the most stretch going out to like JUC or someone for Austin.
Blayne, what about you?
I'm a little different. This is one of those, like, I avoided them because they're road players, but if I'm picking single game week teams, I kind of like Velasco for Dallas on the road against Chicago. I think that's a pretty good shout. Mihailovic going to Cincinnati is another good shout. If you're needing single game week players, like, that's who I would be targeting. Sifu for LAFC against Orlando is a potential one. Just he picks up some bonus points. I mean, when you start talking Jack Price, I mean, you can take Jack Price or you can take Sifu on the road, who's got a little bit more offensive potential there. Depends on what you think of DC. I know there's mixed feelings on them right now. We had a lot of promise for them in there. But if Atlanta's going to keep playing like Atlanta does, that's a game where I think Atlanta could pick up some points on the road as well. Maybe you go with Moreno. Maybe you try Almeida.
Please don't go Moreno. Please
What?
don't do it. I just want to ask that people don't pick up Moreno. Anybody else? I pick up Tyler Wolf before I pick up Moreno. He's not clicking yet. He's just not right there.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just saying, I think you could take a flyer on one of those guys. And depending on what you feel about Portland's defense, especially after seeing them play again last week, one of the LA Galaxy midfielders would not be a bad option either. But I was looking at all road guys that I liked for the single game week teams, which is why I avoided every one of them. But I think if you're in that boat, this is a week you could take some single game or some road guys on the single game and do it. Of course, Austin's going to be a good shout. They're playing so well right now. That San Jose team is so Jekyll and Hyde. Just Austin could get shut out in this game, and that scares me on the road. If it was at home, it would be a no-brainer. But I struggled picking against San Jose at home at times.
Yeah, we have a comment in chat. Someone also shouts at Fagundes. I think, those Austin options in general, like we're talking about. Yeah, they've got like 3 good options there in Austin, so I think you've got some things there. A name that has not been mentioned, I'll go ahead and throw it out now to add to your list. I think you guys have been very thorough. Etienne Jr. If Zella's not going to be there, keep an eye on Columbus. Etienne Jr.'s been kind of a hot commodity as a secondary option. He's done some. Last game he didn't have as high as he has been, but keep an eye on their lineup because in the past, don't know what's going to be this year because they've had him. Just Santos has also played in that spot before, so just keep an eye on the formation. Also see some people mentioning Shaqiri against this first game coming in. Could be. He's had some good bonus points. He got called up, I believe. So
he left for international duty.
So that's the one thing. Some guys will be coming back still. There could be. A lot of these guys will be back. Again, not typical double game week, but there's still that option where maybe a coach is going to rest somebody because there's still the very real, because MLS factor to this game where someone might still get a little bit of a little rest. That's the same thing for guys that we mentioned before. He's also coming back. Just keep an eye. Again, the usual scenario. Keep an eye on the lineups and make your decisions from there. But yeah, no, great list. With hope some people have a few double game week players as well because you're going to see most points from there. I'll say it again, so I'm going to jinx it again. Have never seen, since I've been playing this game for almost 10 years now, have never seen a double game week where at least one single game week player has not been in the dream team. So this will be the time. Since I'm doubling down.
You've willed it. Yeah.
I'm not going to say I'm going to eat a hat because that is all Ashley.
Yeah, I do owe
but
that hat.
Something's going to happen, and someone's going to do well.
For sure.
All right, let's move on to forwards. Blayne.
Yeah. Maybe a Philly forward. Santos and Burke have both played pretty well. This is not a bad matchup for either one of those guys. I think I would go Burke in this one just because I just have that feeling on him. And then maybe you look for Kyoto from Montreal. I mean, I hate to do that to Reid all the time, but you bet against Cincy, and Montreal's clicking a little better. CCL's over. They're getting back to formations that work better for their players. The rotation's not needed as much at this point. And so I would target against Cincinnati if I was picking forward this week. And I know I'm stuck on these road teams just because I feel like the road form is where it's at right now. I don't see anybody I like. And it's too late in the week. The only other guy, I keep hearing Brian White's closer and closer to a return. I heard after the international break he's supposed to be back. I would consider White against Sporting Kansas City this week, but it's so late in the week. Where do you go from there? You got to go to Colorado or you got to go to LA Galaxy. And I don't think any of those are good options, but if you're stuck at the last minute and need somebody, that would be another one to look at. But I struggled with forwards this week. I've struggled with forwards all season. They're not hitting consistently enough. And so I've been either scrubbing them out or putting 2 of them on my bench and starting the only one I have to.
I strongly considered that this week of just putting Vasquez on my bench and just having
Coming out too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, just having him on the bench, and so that I'd have a forward there. So I'm like, well, he'll swap in if I have to have that, or if I want to go something else, because I just wasn't excited about forwards this time. So, yeah. Sorry, Ashley.
This might be kind of out there, but I've thought about it when I was looking at the lineups, and this is earlier in the weekend. But Tati at Toronto. Tati hasn't scored in MLS play yet. Last year's Golden Boot. Toronto's not as bad as I think we thought at one point. I mean, on paper, they're still pretty bad, right? Like, they've really missing a lot of pieces. Not a lot of, like, great names in that lineup. There's some great names, but, like, in general, not a deep lineup, not a lot of strong defenders in there. I could see NYCFC going up there and doing some damage, but again, I'm not gonna pick up Tati, if that makes sense. If you're looking for a forward spot to fill to just kind of grasp at something for single game week, I think Tati's an interesting shout. I know we all had that weird week where we grabbed either Magno or Jason and they produced and Tati didn't. So I think Tati's kind of burned a lot of people already. But he's just someone I kind of have a feeling about this week. Not enough to take him by any means. And then I think it's, you can look at the LAFC striker situation, perhaps down in Orlando. Again, I don't feel super confident in them, especially as a road team, but they're kind of a musical chairs of starting strikers this year, and it depends on who's around them that I think you could possibly start. And then that's kind of it. I mean, Chicharito doesn't play well in that small Portland field. I know Portland's down Van Rankin now. I don't know if Mabiala is going to be back in time for that game. I don't know, what his international duty looked like. But I think if you have to scramble for the Galaxy, I think I kind of like Raheem Edwards a little bit better, just with that field and how that it plays. But not a ton of striker options for me on the single this week.
Yeah, you guys hit it all. Definitely not exciting to say that. I was actually really surprised to see that Tyler had Higuain on his list. So
yeah,
you mentioned that. I will take one quick second because one of the fun things that we do over at the MLS Fantasy Boss Discord is we have a theme team. And the theme of this week's team, this round's team, was single game week players. So there's actually, it's in Discord right now if you're listening to the show. If not, you're going to have to go back a little bit. But check the theme team sub, and you can find that out. These are just single game week players. So a quick little review right here. Room and as the keeperoo option there. Wagner, Hariel that we mentioned already coming in. Shaqiri's mentioned, Gazdag, Ilie, Heel. Higuain is on this bench right here. But so those are some of the names we've already thrown out. You can definitely build a single game week team. You can see the full team if you want to head over to Discord and check that out. Bench options, field options. Check it out there. So you could definitely field a very respectable team. And I'm super curious to see how this team does this round because it is such a strange double game week. I'm really looking forward. There have been other fun themed teams that we've done in the past. Sometimes it's like only people with little foreign symbols in their name, or as compared to English. Let's clarify that for foreign. People with facial hair has been
accentes.
Yes, accent. Thank you. I completely went off there. So fun little things like that. So that'll be it.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna skip. I mean, if you had to pick a single game week captain, who would you pick? I don't even.
Heel just out of fallback.
It has to be. Otherwise, you should have double game week captain.
Yeah.
So that's it. Well, I thought it was going to be pretty quick. That's all that we have for the show tonight. Again, be sure to check out your teams. And we're going to wrap up this weird round 5, and they'll be ready to get back into the swing of things for round 6. Do you all have anything you want to plug, Blayne?
Nothing for me tonight.
Ashley?
I got nothing.
All right. As for myself, just the usual bits. Head over to MLSFantasyBoss.com. I may try to get the ELOs updated, at least for this, but it's going to be kind of slow week for some content since we're still mid round 5. But MLSFantasyBoss.com. Check out the articles and content that we have over there. You can get to the Discord there, MLSFantasyBoss.com/Discord. Fantastic, the best fantasy community that we have going around. And then also, if you want to become a supporter of our Patreon project, if you want to help support this podcast, you can head over to patreon.com/MLSFI, find out about the cool swag that you can get and just how you can help contribute to help support this show, to get back swag, prizes, all sorts of fun things. Pro Rel League early access is what we've been doing there. So just so many great things that are going on with this, the love and support from all of you all who are out there. So touching. I'm so thankful every day to be a part of this fun community. And again, short time. Hope to find something in this podcast. If nothing else, just a good time to have some laughs. And as always, good luck.